zero-emission industry, ensuring raw material access for critical inputs. These are all essential for our green transition and transformation. We need the right price levels. We need modern and efficient industry and industrial products. This raises a number of questions that have to be looked at anew, including with our citizens. We have to work with citizens at local levels, at all. People need to understand why we're doing what we're doing. People need to understand what the industrial policies are and the projects are that we're pushing. In this informal context, we were able to exchange points of views and find out positive and success stories and share some pioneer experience from business as well when it comes to network use, circular economies, and proposals from different ministers, different countries' perspective, and also from different energies. A couple of days ago, the International Energy Agency, referring to critical raw materials, and it says that lithium demand has gone up by 300% in the last 5 years. Cobalt demand has gone up by 70%. Nickel by 40%. We expect these growth paths to continue in the foreseeable years. And these are essential raw materials for digitalization and for our energy systems. We have done a great deal at a critical time and in a short time. We knew we had to diversify our supply chains. You can't replace our traditional single producers and suppliers by creating new bottlenecks from new producers. We have to diversify and must have a better spread of suppliers, but also have better added value at European level, at intermediate stages as well. These require a lot of changes at national, European and local level, and in our relationships with third countries as well. And all that was as part of our debate this morning. We need new skills. We need new investment in new infrastructure and in existing infrastructure to answer our new needs. We need to have more storage, more circulation. We must recycle and reuse raw materials better. We need supply-side flexibility, but we need demand-side flexibility too. It's a major challenge. The network and the grid was built 100 years ago or more in some cases. Interconnections have increased, they've increased flexibility, the grid has grown, but all this needs adaptation and modernization to take better advantage of opportunities. Regulatory work is important in promoting investment and modernization, and if we design the market properly, we send the right signals and we can prepare better for the future. That's why we have to work every day, like today, in a smart way, answering demand, including today's demand, but also bearing in mind growing demands in the future. This has been a very useful meeting, very positive. We got a lot of interesting new proposals, which we'll have time to consider now, all with the Commission playing a leading role along with the Spanish presidency. Commissioner.
Yes, indeed. I agree with Teresa that this informal format of Energy Ministers' meeting was very useful, and I'm grateful to the Spanish presidency for hosting us and welcoming us here in beautiful Valladolid. I also understand that yesterday we had a chance to witness all-time heat record. So this is something that is guiding now our forward-looking discussions. And the Spanish presidency has an ambitious energy program, which clearly reflects Spain's leading role in Europe's clean energy transition. Spain is a frontrunner on renewable deployment. It is home to a vibrant clean energy industry. And it has combined all of this with an attention to affordable energy for consumers and for a just transition. And yesterday and today, as Teresa mentioned, we discussed the legislative agenda for the next 6 months, but also some more strategic issues. And let me start with COP COP28, the EU will have a strong story to tell. The energy crisis did not derail our energy transition, on the contrary. Last year, we had a record new renewable energy capacity addition, and we expect further increase for this year. And carbon emissions last year were reduced by 2.5%. And building on this track record, we discussed today how the EU can best prepare for the COP28. And yesterday we heard from Dr. Sultan Al Jaber, the president of the COP28, his plans and his benchmarks for measuring the success of the conference. And we have a common perception among ministers that this COP is one of the last opportunities to take decisive and collective action for mitigation. And with this perspective, I proposed that the EU supports global targets for energy efficiency and renewables. What we propose is a voluntary, non-binding pledge to triple the global rate of deployment of renewables through 2030. And this is to ensure that most of the newly deployed capacity are renewables. And for energy efficiency, we propose to double the global rate of energy efficiency improvements this decade compared to the previous decade. And these global targets would be fully in line with EU 2030 targets. They do not precharge the portfolio needed to decarbonize the energy sector post-2030. And we want global targets to create a new momentum and encourage the world to match the level of ambition shown by the EU and our member states. And I'm satisfied by the expression of support from ministers and the interest expressed by Sultan Al Jaber himself. And I will bring now this proposal to the G20 ministerial meeting next week, where energy ministers will meet in India. Ladies and gentlemen, the other side of the energy transition is a question of where the necessary raw materials will come from and where the clean technologies will be manufactured. And in the background, there is a concern for the future of Europe's clean tech industry in the context of a global race to attract investment with made-in policies and tax breaks. And we had a very fruitful discussion on these strategic issues this morning. The Commission has put these questions front and center in our strategy to ensure our competitiveness and green transition. And we proposed in March the Net Zero Industry Act to support Made in Europe, Clean Tech Manufacturing, and the Critical Raw Materials Act to secure access to raw materials. And the Strategic Technology for Europe platform proposed 2 weeks ago that will help us to stimulate up to 160 billion euros in investments in critical technologies and make sure companies grow and flourish here in Europe. We discussed the importance of advancing these policies and the barriers we still need to address. And we have a large convergence around the need for Europe to rise to the challenge and do more to strengthen its competitiveness in the clean tech sector. And there is also a common understanding that we need to maintain a balanced approach and not slide into protectionism. I also expressed my confidence that Europe has all the assets, from research to skilled workforce, to capital and a vibrant industrial capacity, to emerge as a lead industrial powerhouse of the green transition. And I am looking forward to advancing these proposals together with the Spanish presidency over the next months. Another issue we discussed is how to make our internal energy market up to date. More specifically, how increased flexibility and smart electricity networks can support us in making the clean energy transition happen. Because the share of renewable energy in EU's electricity system is estimated to reach already around 69% by 2030 and up to 80% by 2050. And the need for electricity system flexibility could increase up to 30% of total electricity demand by 2030. We had a good discussion on how the RED III can pave the way towards faster permitting procedures for renewables, which also apply to energy storage assets and for flexibility solutions. And the electricity market design will add further options in this direction. And of course, we all recognized the importance of regional cooperation in this regard, an issue well known in the Iberian Peninsula. Ladies and gentlemen, last year in July, we were discussing how to cut gas demand in Europe by 15%. It was just a year ago. We discussed that to avoid dramatic crisis. And today in Valladolid, we discussed the future of our energy system. So Europe is shifting the focus from crisis response to its net zero agenda. And this change of focus in itself is excellent news. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, we have a question from the second row. Good afternoon.
A question on grids, if I may, because you have talked about this morning. Should it be a priority, according to you, both for the next Commission to have an initiative on boosting grids? I think this was something that some member states asked to be within the electricity market reform. So should it be a priority for the next Commission? And talking about electricity market reform, of course, I was wondering if you could tell us how this Valladolid Informal Council makes things moved further towards a compromise. If you have an idea on the calendar of this compromise, I know that Mrs. President of the Council, you already told us about what could be your calendar, but maybe a word from the Commission on that. Are you confident that a deal can be found at the Council, maybe before the summer? Thank you.
I will leave the second question to Teresa, because indeed now Presidency has to find a solid majority to support the general approach on electricity market design. But your question about addressing the next bottleneck that we have identified, that our grids need a significant upgrade so that we can move forward with our energy transition, is the challenge is already here, so we don't have time to wait for another year and a half to launch some new initiatives. And we actually don't need that, because with current legislative proposals, we are already addressing the challenges. Just to remind you that electricity market design is designed exactly to accommodate smarter solutions, and on top of that, Net Zero Industry Act mentions grid components and technologies specifically as one of the sectors where we need to increase our production capacity. We are also planning a high-level event in the beginning of September to bring together all the stakeholders, both from supply chain, but also from distribution and transmission sector. And then for the next Commission, for sure, the part of implementation is still remains a task for us to secure that everything that was agreed will be implemented at national level. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question. I could start by saying that, as the Commissioner was saying, last year we were discussing about gas scarcity, and this year we are discussing on the future. And I could add, it is already present. So we need to use the regulatory rules to facilitate that the present facilitates the future. And that's what we are trying to achieve. We did not have, for obvious reasons, any type of formal discussion on the electricity market design. But as you know very well, it is always very useful to count on the different stakeholders around the room, the different minister stakeholders in the rooms, in the corridors, so to understand a little bit better where the main problems, concerns, difficulties or differences may be. So it has been useful from that perspective. And our understanding of the responsibility that we have in our hands is to facilitate an agreement that is acceptable for all. So we will be trying to get a draft document that could be cover the different perspectives without putting at risk what we think are the two main principles in this discussion: how to ensure the level playing field and the well-functioning of the internal market, and how to ensure that the decarbonization process is ongoing. As soon as we may have this new proposal, we will be trying to present this proposal to the different member states. But it is difficult, it is not possible today if it is going to be today, tomorrow, the next week, or whenever. Our aim, our willingness is as soon as possible. And allow me to add another thing, because I think that it is fantastic. It is the first occasion that I have to tell you that I'm also responsible for environment, not only energy and climate, but also environment. And the other day, many of you were asking about what if the European Parliament votes against the Nature Restoration Law. And I think that it is very important to see that today, life and nature have won the support of the European Parliament plenary. It had been challenged by some that were using argumentations that were not right, were not real. But I think that even if we have much to improve yet, it is very good news. Así que creo que es importante.
So I think it's important to stress that a favorable vote by the European Parliament when it comes to the nature conservation law is something which we're very satisfied with. It's not perfect, but it's certainly a very, very good basis for working further, and I think Parliament has voted really in favor of life and nature. Good afternoon, Minister. A question for you, really. Latest developments. Following the debate the other day, do you intend to change your campaign strategy after the failure or success? Many people think that following this debate, the PSOE has now got to do some work. Thank you. It's not really a question which is relevant to this event. If I were to attempt to evaluate and assess a face-to-face, well, there were a lot of difficulties when it came to hearing actual proposals. There were too many opportunities to hear lies or untruths. And basically, when it comes to the question of truths, lies, and so on, it's very difficult to react in that way to citizens' problems. So it was a bit of a lost opportunity for citizens when it comes to their learning what the candidates are genuinely expecting. I think the Socialist Party has been very clear as to its proposals. On the other side, Mr. Feijóo's, well, a lot of lies and untruths, difficult to detect the proposals there.
Hello, I'm Julien Giraud from AFP. I've got a question maybe to Commissioner on COP28 and the EU priorities for the COP. Do you think on methane emissions, and specifically methane emissions from the gas industry, do you think that the EU should work to negotiate a specific target at COP28, like zero methane for 2030, for example? Do you think that it's worthy to push forward this topic for the COP with a specific target, and how to convince the gas-producing countries on this aspect? Because the previous pledge on Glasgow on COP26 wasn't very successful, so what could change this year? Thanks.
I do believe that our global methane pledge that was launched in COP26 was creating a very solid foundation for also to the fossil fuel companies to decarbonize and cut their footprint. For this year, Commission plans to help the countries who are still producing gas and do face challenge that they don't, they have not well cut the methane emissions enough with an initiative that we call You Capture, We Buy. That helps them to make necessary investments to capture methane, but at the same time to commercialize this captured methane by selling this gas. That helps us to lessen the impact of fossil fuel production, but at the same time also compensates the lost gas volumes from global markets. So this is our initiative for this year, and as I was mentioning earlier, we are promoting this year 2 global pledges for renewables. That also creates opportunity for all the countries across the globe to increase their domestically produced green alternatives. And we will not achieve climate targets unless we will prioritize energy savings. That's why the other pledge is also necessary on energy efficiency measures.
If there are no further questions, I'd like to thank you all for being here.
Have been here in Valladolid and attending these press points, this press conference during these 3 days, during the heat wave days, and now it's a little bit calmer, but it is not that there is no heat outside. So thanks a lot for your work, thanks a lot for attending our comments and statements, and have a nice summer.
Thank you, Teresa. I think that is my first press conference.